Well, thanks everybody for coming, and please, there's a few seats in the front, so for all of those of you who are staying in the back, come on up. We're all friends here. So, well, gosh, thanks so much for coming. We want to sort of get things started here today with this sort of mini panel before we sort of get in the meat of the day. But what I thought I might do a little bit is just sort of give you a little origin of where this book came from, and it's sort of unusual that that the Federal Reserve would partner with a nonprofit finance organization to sort of put these ideas together. But really, in many ways, Nancy is such an intellectual leader. She's a leader of her organization, but also of the field. And it was really conversations we had over the years that were kind of bubbling up to sort of say we were at something of an inflection point. We needed to make some changes in the community development world. And what was sort of And in those conversations, we often sort of take on different roles. And then Nancy's, and my role often was sort of the bad cop, and Nancy was the good cop. And I would sort of say, gosh, here we are. We've built, and the main tool for community development is service-enriched affordable housing. We've built 3 million units since 1987 with the low-income housing tax credit. This is an amazing accomplishment, more units than exist from all prior building eras back to when the government got into that business in 1937. A huge accomplishment, and yet, if you look at the numbers, you still see things that are very distressing. You have about the same number of people living in poverty as you did when we got started. You go, even with housing as our main tool, you have people using, with the HUD worst case needs assessment at about the same rate as it was before we got started. And so it seemed like we were sort of taking one step forward and then falling 2 steps back. And so I was very frustrated, and I thought, well, we just have to do something different and try to get some sort of breakthrough in order to be more effective. And Nancy would kind of come back and say, look, why lighten up already? Why be so dour? There's a lot of things that are working, in fact. And so you look at things like a revolution in our understanding about when these sort of intervention points can make a big difference in someone's life, particularly in the early stages. And so, for example, we had Jack Shonkoff at our conference at the Fed yesterday talking about sort of really the person who was behind much of the research stuff from that brain malleability from 0 to 5 that was now learning that if you can create a really rich environment, you can actually dramatically improve the life chances of a child. So she said, look, there's ideas like that, and then there are people you're going to hear from like Shirley Franklin and Angela Blanchard who are doing just sort of working miracles in places like Houston and Atlanta. And so she said, look, let's focus on some things that work. And so that's really sort of the origins of the book, was this tension between, gosh, we're not doing enough, but there are some things that are working. And we thought we wanted to kind of bring that all together. There's also a bit of this background on community development, which is sort of my lifelong journey to try to explain to my mother what I do for a living. And it's not working, but the first section of the book is really sort of kind of gives you a background on what community development is, so you get a better sense of it. So I just wanted to, that was really sort of where we got started, and I wanted to just give you a sense of the arc of the day, how we're going to try. This is in an effort to sort of capture some of the book themes and try to sort of give you maybe a taste of what's in there, and maybe and we hope will sort of entice you to sort of explore further. But basically, through the panels here, we're going to go. We're doing an overview panel, and that's the first one, Places in Poverty. Then we're going to focus on, if you write a book that says investing in what works, people are going to ask you, well, what works? And that's the second panel, right? And then the third panel is, okay, these are some great prototypes, but how do we change systems in order to make more of those possible? How do we create new ecosystems and new environments where you don't have to be, as I say often, a super genius with a billionaire friend in order to make a difference in your community? And so that's the third panel. So, and then we'll have the closing remarks. So I just want to thank you all for coming. That's basically what's going on in terms of the agenda. And I do want to just also sort of give some recognition to the authors and the advisory committee in the audience. And this book started, basically Pam and her group at the Citi Foundation and Nancy cooked up the idea for this book, pitched it to us. And I thought, well, Nancy was very interested in getting it out, well before the election. And I thought, okay, well, we'll try. We'll try to do that. And I did not think we would be able to pull it off, but from the day she pitched the idea to the day we had a book in our hands was 18 months. And I've never, ever worked on a project like that. There are more than 40 authors who were involved, a much larger advisory committee. And what really happened was people who, this is not their main job, this is things they did on nights and weekends, and really it was a labor of love, were submitting their chapters and their articles, and they were nearly perfect as soon as they came in. I've never had that experience before, but it just really, I think, speaks to a deep desire that people wanted to bring these ideas forward and really sort of enrich the conversation in a way that we haven't had before. So if I could just ask, if you were an author or on the advisory committee, would you please stand up so that we can recognize you here? Great. Well,
sure. So I'll tell you who I am. I'm Nancy Andrews, and I'm the president and CEO of the Low Income Investment Fund. And it's been just an incredible privilege for me to have the opportunity to work with David Erickson, Ian Galloway, Ellen Seidman, who were the co-authors or co-editors of this book with the Low Income Investment Fund, as well as with the team at Citi, which has been a longtime partner and a longtime friend of LIF. This is a project, I almost hate to tell David this, but when you write a book and you get done with it, do you know what it's like to kind of have written your senior thesis and then you try to read it again and you really just don't ever want to see it again? This is a project, we finished the book, but now the real project is beginning, because the real project is all about a conversation that we want to start throughout the United States in the community development field, but much larger than that, to lift up the things that we know after 40 years of doing this, we know are making a difference in communities and we believe are making a difference. I especially want to thank Pam Flaherty, who's sitting to my left, your right. This book would not have happened without the support of the Citi Foundation. They've been a partner to us all the way through it. They will be a partner with us as we go through the rollout in regions and places across the country with these conversations. And they have been a partner and supporter of building communities all over the United States and now globally for many, many decades. And a key funder of my organization, which they have been funding us now for 28 years. And I think what that says is that Pam and Citigroup believe in the power of people and place. They believe in the central role of communities as a source of opportunity for Americans. And what we have been doing with this book really is simply putting an exclamation point beside the work that Citi and Pam have been doing for many, many decades. So it's really a privilege for me to be able to sit here with Pam and ask Pam to say a few words to you.
Well, this is going to sound like a love fest because now I'm going to talk about Nancy. The best part about being a funder and a partner is that you get to spend time with really creative, incredible thinkers about these topics that impact our communities so heavily. And at the top of our list is always Nancy. So when she comes to New York to visit or we go to the West Coast, these are the special times when we really get into broad discussions, not just, what are we currently working on, but what's going on in the world? How does this all fit together? And it was in one of those conversations that the question was asked to Nancy, these are great ideas, Who else is thinking this way? Who else would be? And then at some point, the conversation drifted to the comment of, Nancy, you should write a book. And Nancy says, oh, no, I'm too, modest and whatever. But the idea germinates. This is my version of it. She probably has another version. And so then she came back with the better idea and said, I'm going to get together a few dozen of my closest colleagues in the community development field, and we're going to write a white paper. And she talked about getting involved really key thinkers. And I think at the top of that list was Ellen Seidman. And that was an example of the kind of person that we wanted to engage in this dialogue. So it started out with the idea of a white paper, and 28 chapters later, it morphed into this book. And Nancy had also the genius of saying, we need to reach out to a different kind of partner. And I think involving the San Francisco Fed and David and the team has just been the perfect combination. And I think what's incredible about this book, as David talked about the time frame, but the other incredible thing about this book is it's actually readable. You know, if you read, you can pick up the book and read a chapter about a topic that you're interested in, and you'll actually learn something from that, which I think is really incredible. And the last comment I'll make is about this whole issue of thought leadership. And it's not really what you know, but what you can communicate to others and what you can cause to happen. And that really is the last point I would make, which is the book is just the beginning of the conversation. Because what we're trying to do is open this conversation of, you know, great 40 or 50 years, but now what do we do? So with that introduction, let me turn it back.
Yeah, sure. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you to spend just 3 minutes with me and with those of us up here on the stage watching a video. The video is something that came out of, I always say, if you're not really sure what to do, follow your staff. This video came out of an experience where I followed my staff to visit an early learning center that we had supported. I have to say that in 34, at this stage it's 40 years of doing this work, but I like to say 30 years. In some years of doing this work, this moment when I joined my staff and visited this child care center was one of the most moving that I've had in my entire professional career. And I got so excited about it that I went back and I started shooting off emails to David and to Elaine Arkin with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and other colleagues and friends. And I have to say, Elaine at Robert Wood Johnson really caught the passion that I have and I felt about this, and immediately sent a film crew out to this location and produced this 3-minute video that you're about to see. This will be available to you online. People are tweeting right now as we are going through this, and the link to this video will be tweeted. I also want to remind you all that we have a website, which is www.whatworksatamerica.org, and we are inviting you to participate in this larger conversation. Our book, as long as it is with only 400 pages, only has a part of the voices that need to be heard. And our website is intended for many, many voices to be included and involved in this project. So you can tweet. The tweet is #WhatWorks. You can blog. You can write additional comments. You can submit ideas to us and be a part of this conversation. And we will be having regional rollout meetings over the next 12 months. So this is intended to be a very vibrant and inclusive process. But if you will join with me now, just for 3 minutes, to watch the story of the Booth Child Care Center, that would be wonderful. And then we can talk about that a little bit later. The Low-Income Investment Fund is a community development financial institution. We take large investments from Wall Street firms and we break them into smaller pieces and invest them in neighborhood projects. We made this grant to the Booth Child Care Center as a way of helping the center improve the quality of the space where the children play. The investment that we made in Booth helped improve the floors, the sinks, play space for the children, and the garden.
I got here in May 2009. The floor really was unfriendly, filthy at the time, and needed some help. And I knew that the first thing was to get it deeply cleaned. We cleaned it and cleaned it, yet children and staff their asthma was flaring up, and everybody blamed the carpet, which was correct.
When I first started, because I have asthma and have allergies too, I was only taking one medication, but once I started working here, they put me on 3. But I noticed the difference when we had the changes of the floor, the whole environment. I only take 1 pill. I don't have to take the nasal stuff, all that stuff has gone away. So I feel really good about that.
So the entire center is free of the old rug, and now we have a real great friendly floor in the infant room, the toddler room, the lobby, just about everywhere.
The grant that we made was for $80,000, but the Booth Child Care Center is so entrepreneurial that they took that money and they went to other funders, and they were able to take our money and actually double it to $160,000 that was invested in this child care center.
And we're very proud of our patio. Before, we had a patio that really had horrible floor. Everything was patched up, taped up with masking tape. And now we have a beautiful patio that's usable and child-friendly, and you can see it's a functional classroom.
Now, everything is safe, and you know that when you come in, you just have to wait till pick-up time. You don't have to worry about anything else.
We've seen the child care center's finances become much more sustainable because the attendance for the children is up. The children are no longer in the emergency room because of asthma attacks. Mom and dad aren't in the hospital with their children, so they get to go to work, and it improves the family income. And the center is saving health costs because the disability claims of the child care workers are down by a huge amount. The Booth Center is an excellent example of what I call investing in what works. We can take this, and we know that it works, and we can take it from town to town and city to city and make these kinds of investments in ways that multiply power over and over again. So this is, I think, just a wonderful example of how even very, very small investments can have enormous power, can have multiplier effects over and over. It was a completely serendipitous, discovering the connection that exists between investing in childcare and the ultimate health value and the ultimate employment value of that in terms of parents getting to work was completely unexpected to us, because we had been doing this simply to make sure there were spaces for kids in childcare. But when you begin thinking outside of the box and thinking about the ripple effects that go beyond one investment to another, and then telling the story and then recording that so that others can understand it as well, you brick by brick and step by step begin building an extremely powerful story. And that is exactly what this book and the conversation that we want to have is all about. I am going to do a couple of housekeeping matters. I'm going to remind you that we are in a live webcast. Encourage you to submit questions. Those of you who are online and on the web, you can submit questions via Twitter with our hashtag #WhatWorks, or you can use the webcast questionnaire form to do that. Please continue, even after this meeting is over, be a part of our conversation through our website, www.whatworksforamerica.org. Each of our panels for the remainder of this event will be a moderated conversation. We want you to be a part of that conversation. And so you should have cards in your packets that will allow you to write questions on the cards. And if you have one, please raise your hand and someone will come and gather it. And last but not least, the bathrooms are downstairs. So let me now bring the first panel up to the stage, and thank you all for getting us started.